Excuse me. Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I want to talk about some reports that have come out of sort of federal educational departments around the Western world that have touched on supposed sexual abuse of. Well, not just sexual abuse, but sexual abuse in its widest sense, including inappropriate interactions between teachers and students, or even people working in the educational system. It could be, careers counsellors, or even school bus drivers, these sorts of things. So the wider now teachers come up as number one in these reports, but the claim is that there's what would seem like a substantial amount of sexual abuse and inappropriate behaviour. But I just sort of want to, if you crunch the numbers that they use this terrible habit when they produce statistics of categorizing them differently. So the same number set, or the same data set, but they'll sift it and sort it and define it differently. So different definitions can apply to actually the same data set as they move it along through the report. So you really have to sort of sit down and do some serious number crunching. So I guess every year, somewhere in the region of one in every 900 or so students, say in the US, and again, this depends on whose numbers you're looking at and how they're crunched, but around 1 in 900 or so students are subject of what's called a sexual abuse. Now, this is a sexual interaction, and whether you then redefine it or subdefine it as abuse, that can be debated. But because often we're talking about students who are 17 or 18 years old. This assumes the high school system, by the way, not college. 17 or 18 years old, which in some jurisdictions is that 17 is the legal age for consent. So can you say it's a sexual crime, as in underage having sex with minors? Can you make that argument if indeed they are of legal age? And then does the argument separately then become a more technical one of, well, the teacher has a duty of care and it's a government building, therefore because sometimes it's alleged that these intimate acts take place in the government building, or even in class time or school time. Thus, the teacher is an employee of the government, has a duty of care, and is it an abuse of that duty of care to have intimate relations with somebody, in this case a student, of course, that is within your care because you're the teacher, and therefore is that a crime of sorts? And if so, is it at the heinous end or the not so heinous end, and so on? Now, you can have all those debates. Is it inappropriate? Off the charts inappropriate. To what extent is it a crime? So the duty of care issue becomes the issue upon which the determination of criminality is based. Even though that the student may be legally, fully legally, 100% legally able to give consent to intimate relations. So it's around 1 in 900, and it varies. Some students, of course, are too young to give consent. So the issue of informed consent comes up, which is a legal term meaning that if you're 16, you can't give consent to intimate relations. But if you're 17, assuming that's the legal age, maybe 18 in some places, then because you can't legally give consent, even though you may have given consent, then that consent has no legal validity. And thus that inability to give informed consent, plus the duty of care and obligation that a teacher has, which is quite right that obligation, by the way, should exist, I believe, then that combination pushes it into the area of criminality and so on. Then you get other sort of subsets of the thing like grooming, that the teacher is allegedly engaging in developing a relationship with a student that would or may possibly lead to or could lead to a situation of intimate relations. So there's the grooming side as well. I think grooming's misused. I see what grooming should mean, but the definition now is so broad, I don't know if it's even possible to use it other than some sort of general catch-all to go after people you don't like. Anyway, having a look at this. So now, if you look at the numbers and the amount of abuse, now this abuse, by the way, can range from, say, inappropriate text messages. There can be other extremes which I think are rather innocent. For example, say a junior school teacher where the teacher, the student, like a child, I don't know, 8 years old or something, may injure them, they fall over in the playing area, for example, and they're crying and they're hurt, and the woman or the teacher may be a parent who has children, and the children say you have to kiss it better, and so the teacher does that, but that's look, sexual abuse, and that's not sexual abuse. It's quite absurd to categorize it. But these reports apparently also catch, or supposedly at least, have a net that's so wide they bring these things in. So we need to be cautious saying, well, is every instance an act of sexual abuse or inappropriateness? I don't think they are. Do inappropriate communications and intimate acts? Yeah, of course they do, and they need to be seen for that. Now, why is it not such a? It should be. If we look at other examples of supposed sexual abuse of women in the workplace, it's been doing the rounds in Australia recently that no woman is safe. Every woman's being sexually harassed by Hitler in the workplace, and draconian laws are needed. And it's only ever straight white men that do it, by the way. They must be controlled tightly. These evil straight white men, fucking Nazis, have to be controlled. But why isn't this school children abuse thing, which is by far and away a bigger issue than any supposed workplace? I mean, the basis for claims that women are being sexually harassed and abused in the workplace is that they put up some fucking internet poll, and it's alleged that women come in onto this online poll and say, yeah, I've been abused in the work, but without giving any definition of what the abuse might be, or indeed any confirmation of it. So it's just some bullshit poll that is meaningless and is heavily stacked by activists as well. So that's it. 99% of women say they're raped 1 million times every second of every day in the workplace. And I mean, it's hysterical nonsense, of course, but this school thing, and it gets headlines, the media run with it, frothy politicians run around saying they're going to do something. But strangely, there's no chasing after this so-called level of abuse or in inappropriate behaviour, depending on what you want to call it, or one end of the scale rather it falls on. So I just want to talk a little bit about this and talk about why. Now, I remember at high school, this is the final year of high school, there was a very precocious girl who was 17, and I don't know if that was a legal age back then for giving consent. Was it 17? It must have been. I think it was, because girls were getting married at 16. So provided they had, I think, parental consent or something. But so 17-year-old girl, I thought she was quite sexy, very confident girl, very precocious, and she would have worn the shortest dress in the whole school, and she could pull it off. She looked pretty good. And we got a teacher that can't remember what he was teaching now, but the guy, he was fresh out of teachers training college, and I think he was a bit of a sort of something that even as a high school student I'd pick something naive, almost a mummy's boy thing happening there, and they ended up having an intimate relationship, and I don't think there's any doubt who was in charge there. It was her. it was. I don't think much question of that. Now, did I view it, or would anyone have viewed it as inappropriate? She was in an age where she could give legal consent, but he was still the teacher and had a duty of care. Now, it doesn't matter. I mean, maybe they genuinely fell in love. I mean, people fall in love. I mean, it happens. Was that the case here? I don't know. But I didn't view it as, as in, me and my friends, people I knew, we didn't view it as illegal or sordid. I mean, times were different then, but we viewed it as, well, they wanted to be together, and that's it. So the illegality side, I don't recall that the school took any action. Well, the thing continued for a while, so I suppose, and they must have known. Everyone else knew. So these things happened, and they've obviously been happening for a long time. Should we view it as criminal? I'm not so sure. I don't condone or not condone or really have a strong opinion either way on it. The duty of care thing is an issue. Should teachers be having intimate relations with students, whether those students be of legal age to give consent or not, should they be doing that? I don't think that's appropriate. That would be my view. Same as I don't think it's appropriate for a boss in a workplace to have an intimate relationship with their subordinates. Although, the reality is that many relationships and marriages, people meet in the workplace, and they're there for many hours a day in close proximity to one another, and you get to see people up close, how they behave, and you get to, well, gee, I like that person, I like that, and you get on with them, and maybe you ask them out on a date, and down the track you get married, and all that sort of, I mean, it happens. Again, people can fall in love. To what extent do we need to control that through criminal legislation? I mean, that's a matter for, again, wider debate. The ideological debate is, well, if it's the boss, and the boss is a him and the subordinate is a she, then there's a power imbalance, and therefore, because of that, that alleged ideologically determined social power imbalance, it is inherently wrong because the social power between them isn't equal. I think that's an absurd characterization, because if you meet someone that you like, and say, well, how much money do you have? I've got $2. Well, I've only got $1. Oh, wow, you've got more social power than me. Why don't you fuck off? Because we don't have equal social power. I mean, again, utterly absurd. So this social power thing, when it's applied or superimposed on what are normal human relations in places where humans gather, with the workplace or any place, actually, it could be school, of course, in this instance, but so to superimpose ideological Marxist power interactive relations on what goes on is I think nonsense. But nonetheless, we find that the politicians and the media don't really seem to care too much about the if it's a straight white male, they go after it with vigor, but they otherwise don't really seem to care about these intimate if it's a woman having a female teacher, for example, having intimate relations with even if it's an underage male student, then the media just isn't interested. Even if they do cover it, it's a very sympathetic coverage, certainly in Australia, that I've seen. I'll give two examples. Now, there's one where a young, he's sort of 19 and she's 16, and he's an assistant coach. It's some sports team. I don't know if it's associated with a school or not. I think it might be. So she's like, even at 16 years old, she's a tall, very, very physically well built girl, and she is pursuing him for sex, ruthlessly pursuing him, sending the most lurid text messages. No imagination required to interpret what her intentions are. And now, given the photographs that subsequently came out after this became an issue, she was a smoking hot looking girl, and being a young, naive, first year assistant coach, they ended up having intimate relations, and then years later she wanted to dress this up as being some sort of he had not behaved appropriately, and the duty of care thing, given that she wasn't of the legal age at the time, and so on. So he ended up being thrown in prison for that for quite some time. Now, at around the same time, there was a female teacher who had intimate relations with a very well-built, big, solid dude, 15-year-old kid. I mean, the kid weighed like 200 pounds when he's 15 years old. Big kid. And something of an athlete. So she'd been a kind of, a lonely sort of woman that couldn't really get on with people, couldn't get on with men, couldn't keep a boyfriend for longer than 5 minutes. And so she starts softening him up with texts and almost a maternal type approach to bring him in, and then she was going to coach him in schoolwork, and it ended up that they were having intimate relations. Now, she clearly groomed him, clearly set the whole thing up. He clearly was not anywhere near the legal age to give consent. So it was she really set the whole thing up. When it came to it, they didn't want to give her they didn't want to send her to prison. So she got some bullshit good behaviour bond, a few hours of community service, and got a very narrow definition of not being able to be she couldn't be a teacher in that district, but could be a teacher anywhere else in Australia. So really she wasn't affected that much. And there was such an outcry, community outcry. And everyone said, well, if he got treated so harshly by the legal system and the prosecutors really going after him, why was it she got the female teacher got such soft treatment when her crime was infinitely greater? So then the argument came, well, and she's a woman, and why do we have to, and he's a straight white male, the 15-year-old, so really he should take some responsibility. Well, hold on a minute, why shouldn't the girl take responsibility with the sports coach? Well, it's not the same ideology and feminism, oppression, and blah, blah, blah. So they get into all the weeds of ridiculous ideological arguments and about social power and crap. But in the end, such was the carry on that the case was retried, and the woman did get some jail time, not as much as him, and she got released very quickly on alleged good behaviour. So he still did like 5 times more jail time than she did, but nonetheless. So we've got a situation where the political and the legal system isn't really interested in certain teachers if they're from minorities. So if it's women do it, if minority brown and black teachers do it, then it's not viewed as really such a big deal. Now, depending on the jurisdiction, you may get a variance there. And then if you look at the penalties that are issued, you see that there's a big disparity. The straight white male really cops it, whereas the minorities, and remember, most teachers are minorities, not all, but most, and they get they get, from certainly what I can tell, much lesser and lighter sentences. Now, not in every single instance. Again, there are some jurisdictions where everyone is treated the same. If you commit that level of crime, there's a penalty that applies to it. But in most areas in the US, particularly in the Democrat-run areas and cities, then there's a lot of leniency. Now, there's also other ways that it's dealt with, where the teacher is simply transferred or moved around different class, different district, and all this sort of stuff. So, the interesting thing, certainly from my perspective, why isn't the media and the political class more interested in it? Well, the reality is that teachers unions are very powerful. Notice in the 1980s that all Western governments went on this real binge of crushing union power. So powerful trade unions everywhere were being destroyed, except the teachers' unions in every single country, Western country, every single one. The teachers' unions were left pretty much untouched. In fact, their power grew. And if you look, the teachers' unions are the all-powerful purveyors of the globalist Marxist message through the schools and through the education system generally. I mean, why was it that only the teachers' unions were left untouched? That's an interesting topic, a video in itself. Now, the idea is that the teachers are the purveyors of the global. They're the ones saying to the kids, "You got to get out and wave placards about climate change and the oppression of women and mass migration is a good thing. And every mass migrant that comes in, be they illiterate, illiterate peasants, they add billions to the economy. They're so good. And anyone that says that they're not is a fucking Nazi." So the teachers are doing all this impregnating and inculcating the students with all this fucking bullshit. And so they're an essential, a pivotal part of the new world order that the globalists are wanting to impose upon us, ideological government rather than government by consent. And so they are being unduly protected in political and legal circles. And even to the point where teachers that are getting done for sort of inappropriate behavior or whatever, whatever degree of inappropriate behavior, the unions are actively involved in making sure they get other jobs quickly and they don't lose out financially. So they're very well protected. And the event they're unemployable in the education sector, which happens sometimes, those same unions then make sure these convicted teachers get jobs in the NGO sector or as in a private teaching capacity in some activist group or other. So these are people who are very well looked after and protected no matter what crimes they commit, because again, their essential role in furthering the globalist project. Now, I just want to go on and talk about intimate relations, duty of care, and these sorts of things. The amount of women I know who now might be in their, the late 40s, 50s, 60s even, the amount of women who, and these would have been the earlier tranche of women, the first lot of women who were going into university under affirmative action programs. They didn't earn their place at university. They didn't graduate from senior high school. They were soft marked and given easy grades, and then affirmative action through university and got their degrees. So, but they still had this thing that they imagined that they were really, were having to work hard and do it tough. So here's a woman. I mean, we had dinner with her and her husband recently, and she was quite open about it. That she wanted a good part. She had noticed that the people who got the good in her area, some sort of science it was, people who got the good jobs were the ones who had the distinction and high distinction, and they won the medal of being the best student of the year. Those are the ones getting the job. They were hired straight out of college into the big multinational firms, and they were getting the good jobs and the big bucks and all that sort of thing. So she figured that she's quite open about this, no conscience, not even remotely shy about it. And she was saying how on one particular subject there was a dorky sort of professor who was doing it, and she. And again, she would have been 18, 19. She works out that he's a pretty dorky guy. He's not getting laid. There's no way a guy who looks like this could get a girlfriend. If he can get a girlfriend, there's no way the girlfriend will be hot. So she reckons, back in the day, she was pretty hot, which I believe her, by the way. I think she would have been. And so she decides to target him and exchange sexual favors for good grades. Now remember, she sets the whole thing up. Nothing to do with him. She sets it all up, and she tells me how she sort of the entrapment methods that she used, and how she said, "Look, I'm struggling with this aspect of the work. Can you show me?" And so he at the end of the lecture, still plenty of people around. He says, "Okay, you said you wanted some help. Come here. I'll give you what assistance I can." "Oh no, not now. I've got a bit of a headache. can we do this later? And okay, well, if you want. Then she waits till he's back in his office and on his own, and then she goes around. And again, for the sole purpose of entrap. She calculates all this, and very calculating. And she said, I went in. She thinks it's kind of funny in a way that, and she self-congratulates that she was able not only to orchestrate this, but get control of this guy, this lecturer, to a point where he would give her whatever grade she wanted in return for sexual favors. She says, well, that just shows what a kick-ass sort of chick I am. Wow, look at this. I'm only 19 years old, and I've got total control of this 40-year-old professor who does whatever I tell him to do. I mean, fuck, I am a powerful kick-ass chick. And that was the direction that she was going in. And so she tells about how she wore this bum cheek short dress and the plunging neckline and the whole business. And she completely controlled. And apparently he got a little bit, he expressed concern sometimes. Well, I shouldn't really give you these good grades because there are students that are way better than you that work their ass off, and you don't do any work. All you do is give me hand jobs in the office, and you expect the top grades. And she very quickly put this guy in his place. Hey, buddy, you want the hand jobs in your office? You want a hot babe like me doing this? Then you do what the fuck I tell you to do. That's how it works around here. And she's again quite brazen. Now, the amount of women I know, who are give or take within my age range, who did this at college, and they're just yeah, of course I did it. Why not? Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I do that to get an advantage? I was a hot babe back then. Why wouldn't I use that? And if those lecturers and professors and academics are so weak and hopeless that they succumb to that, well, that's their fault. I didn't make them do it. I just offered it, and they took it, and this is what I wanted in return. Those were my terms. They could have said no if they wanted, and so they come at it from that angle. It was the weakness of these men that I could exploit that means I'm entitled to exploit them. And I thought, holy fuck, So, but all of these women really accepted that, and that it varies, I guess. But some women were saying, some of these women who saying they were, entrapping the academics into intimate relations. Some of them were saying, look, I didn't want to do the work. Bottom line is I'm lazy as fuck. I didn't want to do the work. I didn't want to hit the books. I didn't want to have to bust my ass. And the only way I could pass or get a decent pass was to fuck the professor. Others were saying, well, look, I wanted to really do well. I wanted to get the best jobs, and the only way I could do that was by getting the highest level of grade or the highest level of pass in the final exams. And I'm just not that bright. I'm just not that smart. So the only way I could get those top level passes was to fuck the professor. So you had a variety of things. There's another one was saying, hey, I was at university to party. That's what I was there for. I was there to have a fucking good time. Now I want to get the degree and all that sort of thing, but I'm not prepared to do any of the work. I'm there to party. So the only way I could get the degree and do the partying was to fuck the professor. So there were different directions they would go in. Now, technically, I guess you could say, well, the professors were exploiting these poor innocent young 18, 19, 20-year-old girls, and those poor little girls. Oh no, big bad professor. Whoa. But it wasn't that at all. And these girls, made it very, very plain they were in charge. And these naive, socially naive, dorky, fucking professors and academics, they went down like a sack of shit on. And again, I do understand it. I mean, here's some guy who's 40, maybe never got laid or hardly ever got laid, and if he did get laid, it wasn't by a hot chick, and he's got these hot chicks, offering it in return for good grades. And also, there's one man. she's still doing, she's still acting like she's 19. This woman, like she's got to be late 50s, and she's tossing her head and doing these hair flicks as she tells us about it. Again, skiting about it, how cool she was being in charge of this professor, but he wasn't towing the line or wasn't doing what she wanted or something. And she just reminded him very quickly that if he didn't do what she wanted, she would go and lodge a formal complaint, and he'd be out of a job. He'd never work again. And so on. So at 20 years old, she was really prepared to engage in all sorts of brinksmanship. So when you look at this wider issue of duty of care and sexual abuse, it's far more nuanced than just big bad teacher, big bad coach or something like that. It's far more nuanced than that. Do relationships occur? Some of them might be genuine, like the one I mentioned when I was in high school, where she's she's 18 and he's 20, 21. That's probably an age difference that would happen normally in intimate relations. So it's far more nuanced. But the issue I have is why are there not hysterical screaming headlines? Predator teachers, and why aren't we seeing that? Really, why aren't the politicians rushing in front of the cameras to talk about how tough they're going to get on teachers and this sort of thing? They're not, and I don't think they will, but I think it should happen. And if it's supposed to be as bad as it is, then why is it being ignored? And why is other much lesser issues, why are they being pursued with such hysterical vigor? You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.